The year is 1656. The bells of the church toll again, echoing through streets that smell of smoke, waste, and grief. Each ring marks another soul claimed by the plague. The city, once alive with voices, trade, and laughter, has become a silent necropolis. Doors are shuttered, windows nailed, and charcoal crosses stain the walls of infected homes. And into this silence, I step. I did not come here by choice. Nobody wishes to become a plague doctor. The role is not a calling of honor but one of desperation, taken by men too poor, too desperate, or too ignorant to refuse. I was paid in advance, a pouch of heavy silver coins pressed into my hand, because the city officials knew survival was unlikely. Few who wear this outfit live to spend their wages. The outfit of the dead. Before I could face my first patient, I donned the armor of my new profession. Thick leather breeches, stiff and reeking of vinegar, clung to my legs. A heavy oil-soaked black cloak draped over me like the skin of some drowned animal, slick and heavy. My hands disappeared into leather gloves. Upon my head, a wide-brimmed hat announced me as a doctor, though no true physician would envy my post. Finally, the mask, the dreadful beaked mask, its curved nose stuffed with a mixture of herbs, rose petals, mint, cloves, cinnamon, juniper, camphor, and even stranger ingredients like crushed emerald or powdered viper flesh, depending on what the apothecaries offered. Inside, the air was stale and sweet, tinged with rot. Yet it was thought to protect me from the invisible danger, miasma, the foul vapors believed to carry disease. Through the dark glass of the mosque's eyeholes, the world became dim and distorted. I took up the final tool of my office, a wooden cane, long enough to probe, push, or defend without touch. It was as much weapon as instrument, for the sick could be violent in their fear. Thus armored, I became a creature apart, no longer a man but an omen. The first house. My first summons came within the hour. A guard, face pale, led me to a small house where a woman lay gasping. The moment I crossed the threshold, the stench struck me, sweat, rot, and smoke. She lay upon a straw bed, her neck swollen grotesquely. A bubo, angry and purple, bulged beneath her skin, leaking foul pus. Her children stood silent, watching with wide, fever-glossed eyes. Their father begged me with clasped hands, though both of us knew my remedies were more ritual than cure. I laid an onion, sliced in half, upon the swelling, believing it might draw out the poison. I burned rosemary in the corner, letting the smoke curl through the room to cleanse the air. My cane shifted the blanket, avoiding direct touch. The family watched in silence. Their hope was heavy, crushing. Yet I knew most who bore such marks did not see another dawn. The streets of the dying. By evening, I had visited 7 homes. Some patients wailed in pain, others lay still, waiting for death as if it were an expected guest. The city itself was nearly mute. No market cries, no hammering of blacksmiths. Only the wheels of the death cart, creaking through the alleys, collecting bodies wrapped in linen. Children no longer played. They sat in shadows, silent as ghosts, watching me pass with eyes both fearful and curious. To them, I was a monster of leather and glass, neither savior nor man. When I returned to my quarters, exhaustion overcame me. Removing the mask was a battle, the straps stiff, my face damp with sweat. I hung the garments to dry, their surfaces still glistening with oil. My hands I scrubbed raw with vinegar. That night, I knelt by the bedside, whispering prayers. Not because I believed I would be spared, but because ritual was the only comfort left to me. The second dawn. At first light, the bells tolled again. Another 100 dead, perhaps more. I walked the streets with my cane tapping, the cobblestones echoing in the emptiness. Houses bore red X marks, painted hastily, warning all of infection inside. From one such home came the moans of a man too weak to cry for help. I left orders for food to be delivered at the door but dared not enter. His family was already gone. Everywhere, I saw the true rulers of the city, rats. They darted between gutters, their black bodies sleek and bold. Some whispered that fleas and vermin carried the disease, though most dismissed it. The learned men still spoke of miasma, bad air, foul humors, divine punishment. Yet in my secret thoughts, I began to wonder if the rats knew more of this plague than we. Despair and doubt. By the end of my first week, I no longer counted the dead. I simply wrote their names, when names could be learned, in my journal. I noted their swellings, their coughs, their bleeding. My hand grew tired, but my mind clung to the records. Perhaps posterity would learn what I could not. The city began to turn its eyes upon me with suspicion. Some crossed themselves when I passed. Others spat, muttering that I was a sorcerer, that the mask itself was cursed. Children hid behind doorways, dogs barked and snarled. The barber surgeons mocked me openly, jeering at my costume. Yet one by one, I heard they had fallen ill. Their shops shuttered with charcoal crosses painted across the doors. Still the mockery lingered, for to admit I was right was unthinkable. By the end of the second week, I walked only with guards. Even they kept their distance, their hands never strained near me. I began to understand. My outfit, my tools, my very presence, meant to heal, had become a symbol of death. To see me approach was to know death was near. And in truth, was that not always so? The weeks lengthened into months, and time became a blur measured only by the toll of bells and the scratching of my quill across parchment. My journal swelled with the names of the dying, with diagrams of buboes, with lists of herbs and prayers. Yet cures eluded me. A city of suspicion. At first, I had been tolerated, even welcomed in desperation. But soon, whispers spread like smoke through the narrow alleys. They die faster when the doctor comes. He brings the sickness with him. The beak is filled with poison. Children fled at the sight of me. Women slammed shutters as I passed. Men spat curses from doorways. To them, I was not a healer but a harbinger of death, a walking omen draped in black. The barber surgeons, who had once mocked me, began to preach openly that my mask was sorcery. Apothecaries muttered that my treatments were heretical. The monks thundered from pulpits that plague was divine punishment, not a malady to be treated. And so, I stood alone, shunned by those who should have been allies, despised by those I sought to save. When I walked, I carried not just my cane but also the weight of countless hostile eyes. Guards sometimes followed me, though even they kept paces away, their hands always near their weapons. I heard the mutter of prayers as I passed, not for my safety, but for protection against me. One night, I found a note nailed to my door. Leave, or join the dead you bring. The endless rats. If the people feared me, I began to fear the rats. They grew bolder with each passing day, fattened on waste and corpses. I watched them scurry through gutters, creep into homes, gnaw through sacks of grain. At night, I heard them scratching at my shutters, a steady rasp that made sleep impossible. I began to notice a pattern. Where rats thrived, plague soon followed. Fleas leapt from their bodies, biting the poor who slept upon floors or straw. I begged the mayor to improve sanitation, to clean the filth from the streets, to poison the vermin. He waved me away, declaring, "What God has sent, no man may sweep away with brooms." Instead, he called for more prayers, more processions, more ringing of bells. The rats thrived, the people died. Quarantines and violence. The work of my hands became not healing but enforcing quarantine. Families were sealed inside their homes, windows barred, doors marked with red X's. Sometimes the sick begged for mercy. Sometimes the healthy within screamed that they were imprisoned unjustly. But the orders were clear. Contain the plague, no matter the cost. I heard their cries in the night, pleas for water, for bread, for air. Sometimes the sounds fell silent, and then only the scratching of rats could be heard within. Fear made the city cruel. Mobs formed, accusing neighbors of poisoning wells, of bringing cursed herbs, of consorting with witches. Foreigners were beaten in the streets. And I, with my mask and my cane, was branded a stranger in my own city. Once, a group of men surrounded me in an alley, their faces twisted with rage. "You walk and they die," one shouted. "You are no doctor, only death itself." Their hands gripped stones, clubs. My guards raised swords, and the men scattered, but I knew that hatred was only growing. Mass graves. The graveyards filled until no space remained. Corpses lay piled upon one another, wrapped hastily in shrouds, carried by carts whose wheels dripped with fluids of decay. The bells rang without ceasing, toll after toll until the sound became part of the very air. Whole families vanished in a week. Streets were lined with empty houses, doors sagging open, windows gaping like dead eyes. Fires were set to burn infected clothing, bedding, sometimes even entire homes. The sky itself seemed choked with smoke and ash. I walked among the pits, watching as men with kerchiefs over their mouths shoveled soil over layers of the dead. They buried not names, not souls, but heaps of bodies. The rituals of mourning were gone. The plague had stolen not only life but dignity. The weight of the mask. I began to wonder if I still had a face beneath the mask. The leather straps bit into my scalp, the glass eye holes pressed cold against my skin. I wore it so long that the world beyond its lenses became alien, unreal. Children cried at its sight. Dogs barked until they choked. Even my voice, muffled through the beak, became strange to my own ears, an echo, not a man. And yet the mask shielded me. Its herbs filled my lungs with sweetness even as the city reeked of rot. It kept the people distant. It turned me into something less than human. Perhaps that was the only way to survive. I came to understand that my garments were more than protection. They were a symbol, a living hazmat suit, centuries before such words existed. Waxed robes that kept out fleas. Glass lenses that shielded from spit. A cane that gave me distance. The very design by Charles Delorme, the French physician, was ingenious in its simplicity. But to the people, it was not science. It was sorcery. Nightmares and silence. At night, I dreamed of the dead. I dreamed of rats crawling across my body, their claws scratching, their teeth biting. I dreamed of voices crying from behind sealed doors, their hands pounding as the flames consumed their homes. When I woke, the silence was worse. The city's laughter was gone. No songs from taverns, no cries from markets. Only the toll of bells and the rustle of vermin. I began to cough. At first, a tickle in the throat. Then a rattle deep in my chest. Fear seized me. Was this the beginning? I burned more herbs in my room, inhaled camphor until my eyes watered. I forced myself to write, to believe that record-keeping was purpose enough. But deep inside, I wondered, would my name be written in another doctor's journal, marked with a red X and forgotten? A living exile. Each day I walked the streets, yet I was no longer of them. People turned their backs, guards kept their distance, even the clergy looked upon me as if I bore the mark of Cain. I realized then that I had become not just a doctor, not just a man, but a living exile, cut away from the very people I served. And yet, despite the hatred, despite the despair, despite the rats that ruled the night, I continued. For if I did not walk these streets, who would? The winter winds howled through the hollowed city. Ash from burned homes drifted across rooftops like gray snow. The plague had stripped the world of color, leaving only blackened wood, gray smoke, and pale corpses. Death's procession. Each day the death carts passed beneath my window, the wheels groaning as they carried more bodies to the pits beyond the walls. The men who drove them no longer rang bells to announce their coming. There were too many dead. Silence had become the only prayer. I followed the carts once, my mask heavy upon my face, my cane tapping against the frozen ground. They carried the dead to a trench dug by prisoners and paupers. Bodies tumbled from the cart like sacks of grain, some stiff, others still warm. They were covered not with rites, but with shovels of earth. The stench rose in clouds. Even through my mask, I gagged. Yet what struck me most was the quiet. Not a single name spoken, not a single mourner weeping. The plague had stolen not only lives, but memory itself. The machinery of survival. My duties grew darker. I was no longer simply a physician but a manager of death. I marked infected homes with chalk crosses. I ordered the burning of clothes, bedding, even furniture. I recorded the numbers of the dead. The tools of my trade, lancets, leeches, herbal poultices, felt absurd in the face of such devastation. I bled patients who were already pale as bone. I placed camphor on their pillows, rosemary smoke in their rooms. Rarely, someone survived, and hope sparked like a candle. More often, the candle guttered out before my eyes. Still, I wrote. My journal filled with symptoms, outcomes, rumors of remedies. Perhaps one day another would learn from my failure. Perhaps knowledge, if not lives, might be saved. Cracks of light. Amid despair, there were moments, tiny, fragile, of grace. A boy, no more than 10, who survived while his entire family perished, took my hand through his tears and whispered, "Thank you." A woman who had lost 3 children handed me a flower, its petals bright against the ruin, and said, "At least you came." A group of children, thin but alive, began to play again in the square when the carts grew fewer. Their laughter sounded like music after months of silence. Such moments pierced the armor of leather and glass. They reminded me that my role was not only to record death but also to witness life, however fleeting. Fractured brotherhood of medicine. Yet even in this twilight, the healers quarreled. The monks thundered that plague was God's wrath. The barber surgeons clung to bloodletting, opening veins until patients fainted. The apothecaries hawked potions of mercury, of crushed gems, of viper flesh. And they mocked me still, the mask, the herbs, the cane. To them, I was a figure of folly, a bird-headed specter wandering in ignorance. They did not see the truth. My robes were armor, my distance a shield, my records a fragile attempt at reason. I stood alone, not among physicians, not among priests, not among the common folk. A solitary sentinel, bound by duty and exile alike. Fading of the plague. At last, as the months dragged on, the plague began to loosen its grip. The carts still rolled, but less often. The pits still opened, but filled more slowly. For the first time, I heard the sound of a market stall opening, the cry of a merchant selling bread. Birdsong returned to the mornings. Cats prowled the alleys again. Flowers pushed through cracks in the cobblestones. Life, stubborn and miraculous, crept back. I removed my mask one morning and walked outside with bare face. The air was cold, sharp, filled with wood smoke and the faint scent of spring. I breathed deeply, and yet, no relief came. The mask had become part of me. Even stripped away, its shadow clung. A ghost among the living. The people who survived did not greet me with thanks. Some glared, some turned away, some whispered that I was marked by death. Children hid behind their mothers' skirts. To them, I was a ghost, a living reminder of the plague. And perhaps they were right. My reflection in the mirror showed hollow eyes, skin stretched thin, hair turned gray with shock. I was alive, but not the man who had first put on the beaked mask. I carried scars unseen. The cries of the quarantine, the faces of the children who did not wake, the endless scratching of rats in the night. Lessons in ashes. When the mayor declared the city saved, he thanked God, not medicine. The clergy held processions of victory. The merchants reopened their stalls. Life stumbled back to its feet. But I knew better. The plague had not been defeated, only spent. It would return, whether in years, decades, or centuries. The rats still ran in the shadows. The fleas still fed unseen. The air, though clear, still carried secrets no prayer could banish. And so I chose a new role. No longer merely a physician, I became a teacher and a chronicler. I spoke of quarantine, of observation, of herbs and fumigation, of the mask that had shielded me. I told the tale not as triumph but as warning, that ignorance and filth breed death faster than swords. Legacy. Now, when I walk the streets unmasked, I see the city alive again. Children chasing cats, markets bustling, churches ringing their bells in joy instead of mourning. But I walk as one apart, a man set adrift by memory. My journal lies heavy with names, with drawings of swellings and lists of herbs. It is not a record of cures, but of endurance. Not of victory, but of survival. The plague stripped me of my humanity, yet gave me a strange gift. The knowledge that even amid death, life insists on itself. And so, I breathe, deeply, of the untainted air. I feel the sun on my face. I hear the laughter of children once more. I am no savior. I am no hero. I am a witness. A witness to sorrow, to resilience, to the fragile spark that endures even in the shadow of death. And though the mask lies discarded, its long beak gathering dust, its shadow will forever hang over me. For I am the plague doctor, and this is my legacy.